Having your hand raised after a hard-fought battle is one of the most incredible feelings in the world. I admit that there might be a level, perhaps, of narcissism and vanity there, but I couldn't help it. I became addicted to it. When I was a teenager in Brazil, I was obsessed with being the best in the world at something. I didn't know what that was, but I was desperately looking for something. I wanted a vehicle to manifest that ambition. I wanted to shine somehow, and I just didn't know how. It wasn't until I found the martial art of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu that I knew I had found my passion and my calling in life. I knew I had found something special, something that was going to help me be that person I wanted to be. To say that I was emotionally invested in Jiu-Jitsu is an understatement. I was obsessed. It's the only thing I wanted to talk about. Had World War III been going on, I wouldn't have cared. It didn't matter. It was about the training, it was about the tournaments, that's all I cared about. I threw myself in the competition world. I fought hundreds of times. I won some, I lost some, and in the process, I learned something about winning and losing. I learned that whenever I won, I felt great about myself. I felt invincible, I felt powerful. Winning is this feeling, you just want to feel like that all the time. And it doesn't matter what kind of win we're talking about. It could be having your hand raised, a medal, or perhaps a new car, a new house, make some money. It feels great. But eventually, inevitably, what would happen was I'd go back to the beginning, as if the whole thing were a pendulum between boredom and desire, and I couldn't quite escape that. And you see, if that were the worst part, that would have been fine. But whenever I lost, I felt terrible. I felt like a failure. I was devastated every time I lost. Never recovered from it. Right? I still torture myself over losses that took place 15 years ago. You know, how do you deal with this? Like, I feel like a failure. My previous achievements mean absolutely nothing. I noticed over time that I wasn't the only fighter dealing with this. In fact, I noticed that a lot of people dealt with this. We're all constantly struggling to find a balance between peace of mind and achievement, success, right? Can these things coexist? That's a very important question. Can we, or is like one prerequisite for the other? Do we have to feel like our previous achievements mean nothing for us to have the drive to keep going? Over time, this is a topic that fascinated me, the will. Like, what's going on in there, right? And the question that kept nagging at me as a competitor at the time was, what's the point of winning? What's the point of being better than the person next to you? If you know perfectly well, it will not satisfy you. You buy that car, the other day it's just another car. You buy that house, the next day, just another house. You can't win that way. What is it that we're chasing? Are we chasing shadows? I had the privilege to be, for my entire adult life, in a fiercely competitive environment of an ecosystem of uber-driven alphas. The fight world is a very competitive world. Every person on the mat is trying to beat you at all times. I learned a lot about pressure in those years. Pressure you put on yourself, pressure that your peers put on you, pressure from your sponsors, pressure to win. It is a game of inches. Split-second decision. You make that wrong decision one time and your career could be over. That's the kind of game we're talking about here. It is very cutthroat. And being around that environment for so long, I've seen the darker side of that sort of pressure. I've seen anxiety, I've seen depression, I've seen even suicide. And I'm not going to lie, it's even crossed my mind when I lost. Like, this is things that, I took losses very, very hard. Like, it was very difficult for me to deal with them. And the thought of suicide crossed my mind, every time I lost a tournament. A lot of pressure. So, very high expectation in me to be the best in the world, right? But I wasn't alone. In fact, fighters are not alone in this. The World Health Organization estimates that approximately 615 million people worldwide struggle with depression or anxiety. These numbers are staggering. They're on the rise. I believe they're a reflex of a civilization that is obsessed with success, financial success, with fame, and not with happiness. But when you put all of this under a microscope, is winning really the only thing? I want to share a story with you guys, a very personal story. I was somewhat successful in the jiu-jitsu world. I went on to win the 2 most prestigious world titles. I went on to be one of the most successful competitors in the history of the sport. I was at the top. I was the pinnacle of my sport, right? And that's what I wanted when I was a teenager, right? I got it. Should be happy. Done, right? Of course it's not done. You want more, right? And if you're a martial artist, the greatest stage on earth is the UFC, the Ultimate Fighting Championship. It is the modern-day Coliseum for modern-day gladiators. I have a hard time thinking of a sport that is as complex, as competitive. It's out there. Like, it's a very intense sport. And I became obsessed with it. I wanted to be a UFC champion. I was going to crown my martial arts career with one more win. I was going to be a UFC champion. That was that. Like, now I'm done. After that, I was going to be done, right? Things didn't quite go my way. I had a successful record. I was winning all my fights in the first round. I was undefeated. I was doing great. I made it in the UFC. And when I made it in there, I won my first fight. I won by submission in the first round. And a few days later, I received a message from the UFC. I failed my drug test. Translation, you're fired, you're cut. Now, for a middle-aged man like me, being cut from the UFC is practically a professional death sentence. It's very hard to recover from that. And the truth of the matter is I didn't want to recover. I was done. I was so ashamed of myself. I was so devastated because I had only myself to blame because I ruined my career. What am I going to do? Where do I go from here? I don't have the energy to recover. Right? I did push myself into the ring one more time, went to the cage, one more time. I fought, I won, but I knew I was done. I didn't want to be there. I was there because I was not going to allow my career to end on a negative note. No way. I'm going to end on it's not going to be a UFC belt, but it's not going to be me getting fired from the UFC either. I got a little bit more in me, and that was it. I was done. You see, what fighting teaches you is to be very honest with yourself. You can't lie to yourself. The mats don't lie. That's what I always tell my students. It's a very real place. You can't pretend to be good. This is not Instagram. The mats are not Instagram. You can't fake something you're not. You're either real or you're not. You're going to win or you're going to lose. And if you're in that environment long enough, what happens is you begin to be very honest with yourself. You look at yourself in the mirror and you can't go, oh, I'm going to lie to myself and be okay with it. You start becoming honest with yourself. And when I looked at myself in the mirror, I knew I was broken. I was psychologically broken. I didn't want to recover. I was done. But that wasn't the only reason that was torturing me. I was profoundly ashamed of myself for having lied. I lied to my friends. I lied to my coaches. I lied to my training partners. These people had supported me for years. They had created an enormous expectation for me, and I lied to them. And that hurt me. I think that was the thing that hurt the most, that I was known for a liar, right? And I didn't want to be known as a liar. I wanted to be a truthful person. I wanted to be the guy who told people the truth. I had to be cut from the UFC to learn that about myself. Those years were very lonely. A lot of my friends moved away from me. There were years of introspection. I had to look deep and find out what else is in there. Am I a frustrated, middle-aged fighter who failed a drug test and got cut from the UFC and ruined his career? Is that it? Or is there something else? Is there someone else in there, a different fighter, perhaps not an MMA fighter, but a different kind of fighter? And I wanted to find out, and I had to look inwards. I wanted to find out what defines me. Does fighting define me? I had a name in the community. I made decent money. I traveled the world teaching seminars. I had 2 beautiful daughters, successful business. My life wasn't bad. Like, it's a good life, but somehow I felt like a failure. In my own skin, I felt deep down in there, I failed. Not doing this is, but it was done. I can't go back in time. I can't go back in the UFC. It's over. So how do I fix this? I needed a new mindset. I needed to look at things differently. I needed a new perspective in life. I needed to admit to myself and come to terms with the fact that I was not going to be a UFC champion, that ship had sailed. I was not going to collect the reward. I was not going to make the money. I was not going to get the belt, the fame, the popularity, the adoration of the fans. But the more I thought about the things I wasn't going to get, the more I realized these things would have not satisfied me to begin with. How do I know that? Well, I've been a champion in jiu-jitsu. I know that didn't fulfill me. I've been around UFC champions my whole life. It's never enough. I've been around billionaires. They don't think they have enough money. So what's the end? Like, how do you get out of this, right? And I knew I wasn't going to be satisfied. So I began to look elsewhere, like what else is going on here? Like, how else can I solve this problem? At some point, I started thinking about the teenager that set out on his journey, that skinny teenager who was obsessed with having his hand raised all the time, right? Who loved gold medals. And that teenager was a different person. Like, he set out to prove himself to himself. It wasn't about other people. It wasn't about money. There was no money. I never made any money when I was a teenager. It was pure. I wanted to be great. I wanted to grow. I wanted to be a better version of me. I remember as well that when I was a teenager, I was obsessed with Friedrich Nietzsche. I just loved him. For some reason, he spoke to me in a way that other writers didn't. I knew what he was talking about. Like, this guy understands me, right? And I moved away from him. I didn't read him for years. And a few years ago, I got back into reading him, and I saw some strength there. I saw that through struggle, we grow. That's what he teaches us. When we fail, we grow. There's value in losing. There's value in failing, as long as we use these things in a positive way. In his words, happiness and suffering are brothers and sisters, and even twins. They either grow up together or remain small together. I started thinking about all these things, and I realized that these were issues that were universal. They were issues that I was struggling with, but I was going to turn this around. I was going to use that failure for something else. I was going to grow with it. And I think we've all witnessed this. At some point in our lives, we have experienced this kind of growth. Like something terrible happens and we think we're done, we're devastated, and we rise above and we look back and we go, I'm so thankful that that happened to me, right? Imagine, perhaps you lost a job at some point, and now you're devastated because you're unemployed. But then later you get a job that's your dream job, and you feel so much better, so much happier. And you look back and you go, I'm so happy I was fired. I'm glad that happened to me. Or perhaps you had your heart broken at some point, and you look back and you go, I'm so happy I had my heart broken because now I found true love. I found someone so much better. I dodged that bullet. I'm doing so much better now. We experience these things in life. These are hard lessons, but they're necessary lessons. You see, I think we all set out with huge expectations for ourselves in life. We want to be rich and famous. We want to be the best looking person in the room. We want to be the best fighter in the world. Whatever it is that we're striving for, we're always looking for something else. But we're not finding satisfaction. I came to think of all of this as perhaps there are two different wins here. Perhaps there's a win that we're more familiar with. Perhaps there's a win where, I get my hand raised, I make some money, I buy a new car, and you feel good. It's temporary, but it feels good. That's one win. It's valid. I don't think you should stop chasing your dreams. Those are valid dreams, but we know they don't satisfy. But perhaps somewhere there's a different dream. There's a different way of winning. There's something else, a different kind of win. What if we use the hard lessons to improve, to grow? And if what if that growth transforms us and makes us better? And we keep that because that stays with us. When we fail and we grow because we've learned, we keep that lesson. It doesn't disappear after 2 or 3 days. I began to see that these were the things that are most valuable, was the growth from the lesson. It was not so much the fact that I had failed, but the fact that I found the strength to rise above. I have no idea who that person would be who had, potentially would have won a UFC belt. No clue. But I would not trade places with that person because the lessons I learned are so more meaningful. The wisdom I've acquired, the lessons I've learned about myself, about my inner strength, about people. I learned a lot about people. About life in general. That I'm carrying with me. Millions of dollars, they come, they go. Fame, it's not even that fun. I've experienced a little bit. It's really not that fun. Money, not that important. The lessons, that stays. That I take with me forever, the wisdom. And I think that teenager, really deep down, he was really after wisdom. He wasn't after popularity or money. He wanted to be the best version of himself. What is the point of winning? What my 2 decades in the fiercely competitive fight game have taught me is this. Winning is good. Winning is necessary. Winning is the right thing to do. But we need to understand, you're not going to find satisfaction making more money. You're not going to find satisfaction being more famous. You're not going to find satisfaction winning another gold medal. That's not it. We find satisfaction when we grow. And the truth of the matter is the best and fastest way to grow is to fail. I'm not suggesting we should be trying to fail, but when we do fail, we use that as a trampoline, and we grow with it. I no longer think that being better than the person next to me is a meaningful win. I have grown more ambitious. The way I look at winning and losing now is I don't see them as ends. They are means. They're means to something else. The building of character, the strength, the transformation, the pursuit of something else, the pursuit of shaping us into something better. I'm no longer an MMA fighter. I am a coach, I am a leader, and I'm a father. And as such, I feel the responsibility to pass on to my students and my daughters these lessons. When they fail, and they fail all the time, I tell them, you should use that. You're not on the ground. You can pick yourself back up, and when you do, you're going to be better for it. This is an opportunity to grow, and you're going to grow in a meaningful way. It's not temporary. It is permanent. This sort of transformation is permanent. Being cut from the UFC has taught me is this. We are as great as the challenges we choose to face in life. When we face these challenges and we confront them full-heartedly, we grow. And when we grow, we win. The ultimate victory is not the popularity, it's not the medal. The ultimate victory is being proud of who you are. Thank you.